supposed to be art. And art is suffering!
In life, sometimes a little suffering is needed to make a fantastic piece of art. Daring to take a risk with an emotionally deep creation than a safe, paint-by-numbers piece. But when it comes to video games, you also want to have a bit of fun with your piece. That's pretty much what they're made for. So how can it be a fun game to play, yet still be depressing as all get out without succumbing to ludonarrative dissonance? Well, the East End Games managed to find the secret by making the ultimate tragic beauty titles, where the narrative and theme will move you to tears, but the gameplay will keep you invested just enough. And here to help me out is a fellow tabletop gaming enthusiast and your best guide through Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Nonat1s.
Howdy, my name is Nonat and I am so excited to be here, though I'm not sure how much help I'll be on the depressing side of things. I'm generally a pretty happy guy.
Weren't you, crying over orcs last week?
Yes, because they're so misunderstood.
There's a simple reason that the Soulsborne games don't succumb to ludonarrative dissonance. These games are about survival. These are crapsack worlds filled with crapsack people. You're gonna need to use anything and everything to defeat these horrible abominations. So that feeling you get when you spend so long trying to defeat a difficult boss is totally in line with the game's world. And even then, most of the lore in the games is in text logs, so you can skip it if you don't want to read it.
When you dive into said lore, however, things take a turn. You find out that many of the bosses you face were either tragic monsters or corrupted heroes, and it's not like you get a big chance to save the world or anything. The first one ends with you deciding whether to continue the cycle of lighting the fire or become the Dark Lord.
With this in mind, the Soulsborne games are low on this list since it's pretty easy to disregard their stories. After all, when you've lost to that one boss for the 30th time, you probably don't have their tragic backstory in mind.
This is a pretty short entry, I know, but it's the Soulsborne games. They're as simple in face value as you can get. They are as depressing as they are cryptic. Mercilessly so. Okay, so apparently we're going to be talking about Yakuza.
What about it?
Isn't this the same series where you're running from gang members and police for a crime that you didn't commit to having a chicken as your manager in your housing side business?
And?
You don't find that weird at all?
Well, the chicken's in this game too.
Oh boy.
Picture it. You are Ichiban Kasuga. The head of your Yakuza family is like a father to you, your mob brothers are family to you, and you get to spend your time running around the beautiful city of Kamurocho. This colorful city is full of friendly people, great restaurants, arcades, and, taking the blame for a murder you didn't commit, sentencing you to 18 years in prison. When you finally get released, you find out that the world has undergone a technological revolution. Smartphones, the internet, and so much more. Worst of all, your old Yakuza family pretends to not even recognize you. Now you have to make new friends and start investigating this betrayal by forming connections with rival gangs, uncovering political subterfuge, and working your way to the top of the Yakuza ladder to find out what happened. And how do you do all of this? Why, through Dragon Quest-style RPG battles, of course. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a JRPG set in the modern-day world, with familiar battle mechanics like turn-based combat, a class system, leveling up, and equipment. Everything about the gameplay feels like a classic Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest experience, and the game is well aware of this. While the story is depressing and heavy, the gameplay is the polar opposite. Between heavy story beats, you'll find yourself grinding up levels by fighting ridiculous enemies, learning more about your party members through lighthearted and often comical cutscenes, and completing some of the most insane side quests you'll ever experience. One second, you're investigating the murder of elderly people to steal their pension money, and the next you're fighting the head of a Yakuza clan dressed in a diaper. Really?
To be fair, he was also in Yakuza 2.
These wild beat changes keep you engaged and constantly wondering what's going to come next. Not only that, but the emotional whiplash causes the comical moments to be extra funny and the serious moments to hit even harder. However, these tone shifts can also work to the game's detriment. Not having a balanced focus can make the game feel uneven and hard to take seriously, period. Especially when the side content is more plentiful than the actual story. Due to this, it is lower, but still a great ride regardless. It's 2001. You just got home from school and boot up your original Xbox. Your friends all told you that you just had to play this awesome new game, Halo. It's got an awesome sci-fi soldier on the front, and within 10 minutes of starting the game, you're blasting aliens alongside Marines and defending the human race. The music is incredible, the sound effects are iconic, and the experience is absolutely incredible.
Before long, you touch down on an alien landscape known as Halo, and you're fighting the Covenant, listening to your allies discuss battle plans, and learning that Halo itself is actually a weapon. You race the Covenant down into the depths of Halo, blasting faces and having a grand time, until the game suddenly takes a disturbingly dark turn.
The music shifts to an uncomfortably grim tone. It's quiet and unnerving compared to the loud guitar riffs from before. There are suddenly no enemies to fight. No humans, no Covenant, just silence. Eventually you find a single human soldier slumped against a wall, screaming to himself. Something has scarred this man for life, and he can't communicate or speak clearly. We proceed onward, and eventually find the corpse of a human soldier alone in a room. You pick up his helmet, extract the recording device, and play it back. This is where the entire game changes.
Mira! Hold still! Hold still! Let him have it!
Well, crap.
Yeah.
This soldier and his entire platoon found that hidden within Halo was a bioweapon known as the Flood, a parasitic life form that murders living organisms, consumes their biomass, and takes over the husk as its host. The Flood murdered your allies, and within seconds of finding this recording, you're attacked by not only the Flood parasites, but also the assimilated husks of your former comrades.
This second half of the game is completely different from the first. No longer is this just a high-octane run-and-gun army mission in space. Now, it's an emotionally charged fight to stop the Flood from wiping out all life in the galaxy. And of course, while you're doing this, the Covenant are still trying to kill you. So we got the Covenant, the Flood-infected husks of your comrades, the original Xbox controller. You have many enemies in this game, and very few allies.
Great googly moogly, it's all gone to shit!
But despite that, the gameplay is still fun. While it goes from space shooter to parasitic horror, you're still having a ball blasting through all of these aliens. Just don't get infected yourself.
If I had a nickel for every time I saw a big Japanese video game auteur that's a fan of sexy people getting uncomfortably philosophical, I'd have 3 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened thrice. Hideo Kojima, Suda51, and Yoko Taro. We're talking about this guy right now, and the game that arguably catapulted him to becoming a gaming icon, Nier Automata.
The game doesn't give much indication for the casual observer to think that this game will bring anything other than awesome high-octane combat versus giant robots and constant upskirts of the game's lead, and maybe even a little sexy dress-up minigame. What most gamers expected when picking it up for the first time is a raunchy hack-and-slash with a lot of butts.
What we got was a ceaseless bombardment of existentialist questions that philosophers have been pondering for centuries and have driven many a player into fits of depression and crises of self-realization. That's also a raunchy hack and slash with a lot of butts.
Gotta appeal to the masses, I guess.
Yeah. Those are some masses.
Nier Automata's setting is kinda weird and complicated, especially considering the insane amount of different endings, so I'll do my best to summarize without being spoilery. Basically, aliens invaded, made Earth dangerous, mankind went to the moon to save themselves, and now they're trying to reclaim Earth with sexy androids. And, uh-oh, looks like the robots are acting up, gaining personality, evolving. Like, life, in a way? There's a lot of philosophical questions that arise about consciousness, the meaning of life, and what it means to be human, and what actually separates us from machine. Yeah, who cares? Giant mecha battles!
The gameplay is certainly bold, being a quest-based open-world game that's also a combo and dodge-based hack-and-slash. That also occasionally throws in bullet hell as well as the occasional fixed camera. It gives us giant boss battles as well as puzzles and hacking minigames. This game really threw everything into itself, and the more we think about it, Nier Automata was a game that really should not have worked, and yet it did.
Now, if you don't find existentialist ideas depressing, or in other words, you're confident in your personally developed philosophy, you should be fine. But you know how Yoko Taro is. His games are as depressing as they are confusing. So, very. If you don't want to, you just don't have to think about it really hard and you can enjoy some sexy androids.
Nier Automata combines so many different elements into a cohesive and complete package. While nothing it's done is really unique for a video game, getting all of it into one game and having it not suck is a marvel of gaming. Depressing existentialisms never looked so good.
What could be more fun than fighting mutants in an underwater New York City and gaining new magical powers like pyrokinesis, lightning bolts, and bees?
Little. Very, very little.
Bioshock, from a gameplay standpoint, is one of the most solid games out there. It has a perfect balance of puzzle solving, gunplay, special abilities, and upgrading. You never feel stuck or repetitive in your options. Your guns are always getting better, you're always getting new powers, and you always feel like you're improving.
But that fun gameplay is instantly overshadowed by the dark and harrowing story unfolding around you. You see, it might sound crazy, but a dystopian underwater New York City infested with mutants is actually kinda depressing. In no small part, this is due to the fact that almost every enemy you fight has some kind of story behind them. None of these are random grunts that were simply placed in your way to make the game hard. No, these are victims. These were people once.
They were human beings who lived in the City of Rapture. They had families, jobs, and lives that they shared with other people in this city. Now, however, due to the rampant spread of corruption, greed, and power, most of these people have become genetic monstrosities who can hardly even think straight. They attack any other creature on sight, even each other, and they live like feral beasts.
And with that, you also get a morality system that lets you choose whether or not to absorb the energy of little girls to make yourself stronger. Yeah, that turned more morbid. Luckily, it's more of a yes or no decision than having to choose dialogue options here or there. While it is a soft system, because it is, it's very easy to feel the impact of your actions if you're good, and ultimately can get a happy ending.
Even with all of that, the worst part of the experience for us is that you can see what a beautiful place Rapture used to be. Even broken and flooded, the city retains some of its former glory, and you're left to imagine what it all looked like when it was at its peak. Light, decorations, and well-dressed folks living a high-quality life under the sea. It's not what's directly in front of you that's so depressing about Bioshock. It's what used to be there.
You remember the days when kids' games were allowed to talk about the inevitability of death?
Are you okay?
I am. Majora's Mask is not.
Everyone and their grandmother has heard of Majora's Mask, mostly because pretentious YouTubers can't shut up about it. The subtle, creepy atmosphere, the deep, intimate storylines hidden in almost every side quest, and of course, the moon!
We're taking this baby to the moon!
Once upon a time on the internet, you couldn't walk 2 steps without running into a Majora's Mask meme. Been drowned, anyone?
Now, the atmosphere of Majora's Mask has been talked about to death. But what makes it so eerie? Well, I'll let our good friend Tattle explain.
Even though you can turn back the time, you're always a moment too late.
Even though you can turn back time, you're always a moment too late. That is frickin' raw!
Even breaking the laws of space-time, you can't escape the Reaper's sight forever.
While each Zelda game is not afraid to try new things, usually the main story arcs remain the same. Link is a destined hero, clears out a few dungeons, defeats Ganon, and rescues Princess Zelda. Majora's Mask subverts this convention.
Keep in mind, this game takes place immediately after Ocarina of Time, where Link is a victorious hero who saved both timelines of Hyrule. Allegedly. and he goes off to search for Navi. Well, in his journey, he immediately gets his gear stolen, his faithful horse taken, and he gets transformed into a helpless Deku scrub. To top it off, where has he ended up? In a brand new land that has no idea what Hyrule is, and is getting discriminated against and picked on. So this Link has lost everything. His mementos, his friends, his reputation, and even his own body. He completely starts off at rock bottom. Do things improve for him?
Yes and no?
Yes, you can help the people of Termina, and you have all the time in the world to do so. But the catch is, any fame or thanks Link gets is immediately undone the next day because of his time travel, and more often than not, it's attributed to the forms he is granted from the masks he wears. Link is essentially a nobody, walking invisible through this society, which is slowly careening towards inevitable destruction.
As for the fun of the game, well, what is there to say? It's the 3D Zelda fare you've come to expect. Reaction and puzzle-based combat, dungeon delving, minigames, and quirky NPCs. But the whole thing is wrapped in this soft blanket of dread and depression.
Thankfully, there is a happy ending after God only knows how many resets. Link finally faces off against Majora, defeats the deity? Demon? Eldritch Abomination? Whatever. Link wins and Termina is saved.
Again with Shadow of the Colossus? Okay, no. If you don't know, I have this library of repeat offenders. You go home! I moved on from you!
Yeah, but how long has it been since you've actually talked about Shadow of the Colossus?
Huh.
Well, never thought this day would come. I gotta brush the dust off of my opinions about Shadow of the Colossus. So the game already has a promising start with its melancholy tone. Ooh, atmospheric music, hardly ever in a major key. Yep, that'll do it. Oh, starting out with a dead sister slash friend slash girlfriend that you have to resurrect at a heavy price. Well, I can only see this turning out well for our hero. Oh, what's that? Black spirits that come out of the colossi you kill that seem to corrupt your body and give you horns? I'm sure that's just someone getting their tiefling cosplay on.
Had to get one tabletop reference in there, didn't you?
Hey, you find new ways to talk about this game that I haven't done yet. That doesn't involve singing.
There's little debate. This game begins and ends like a classic Greek tragedy. So what makes it fun? Well, two things. Firstly, the journey to each Colossus takes you across some gorgeous and breathtaking landscapes. And while the music itself is depressing, it's also very soothing and relaxing. Seriously, this soundtrack is among the best ever put into a video game.
The boss fights with each Colossus are intense as well, combining elements of real-time puzzles and platforming with each boss, for the most part, feeling unique. Though just a warning, the fights are long. Seriously, with how massive these behemoths are, you're gonna have to deal with a slow burn. While that may make it land a little lower for the purposes of ranking this list, it's effective for what the game is trying to pull. It feels like a creeping shadow, and once you tackle that burn, you get a sense of triumph and awe when you take these magnificent creatures down, which reminds me of the most depressing part of this game. In the grand scheme of it all, you're the bad guy.
People, stop hunting monsters! Don't be like the French!
Really stop and think about it. The Colossi are just oversized wild animals, and a good few of them aren't even hostile, and yet here you are, hunting them down and slaughtering them in their territory. And the worst part? It's all just a scam to allow yourself to be possessed, meaning all that effort, all that slow burn, all that stress was worth
Nothing!
Yep, congratulations! You just killed the last of an endangered species for nothing! Yeah, it's pretty twisted, but it's the kind of tragic beauty element that gives Shadow of the Colossus the place it deserves on this list.
Kind of feels like the more accurate title should be Poaching the Game.
Wow, dude. I mean, you're not wrong, but still, wow.
At the start of their tenure, Telltale Games leaned a lot more towards the sillier point-and-click games with a bigger emphasis on puzzles. But as time moved on, they started to pivot. Pivot towards more emotional, story-based games that dangled the idea of your actions having consequences. And unquestionably, their biggest hit in this change of genre? The Walking Dead. We all know about the massive franchise through the comics, TV series, and games, and its depressing and horrifying themes that remind us that it's not the dead we should fear, but the living we encounter. Or, in some cases, the writers, cause who knows what stunt they're gonna pull next.
Hell ain't other people. It's me.
As for the Telltale game itself, it has a really nice comic-like aesthetic, right down to the designs of the walkers, which are ghoulishly really, Josh?
Now you know how it feels working with my co-writers.
And even though it's a brand new outlet, the horror is still very much there, and the weight of the epidemic is felt even harder through each and every character. Speaking of the characters, they are the perfect tools for toying with our emotions because of just how invested we get in them on both sides.
On one side, you have the survivors you grow attached to, and you're forced to watch them trudge through all types of physical and mental struggles. Hunger, loneliness, depression, and having to make the difficult decisions no one should be forced to make. The turmoil is torturous, and you'd give anything to give these poor souls a break.
But on the even darker side of the board, there's uncertainty with every new face. Each new character poses the potential of being a major threat instead of a team player. Sure, some of them turn out cool and on the level, but you still run the risk of running into the turncoats, the assholes, the whack jobs, the liability, and that's only half the list. You have no idea who you can trust. And then you end up running into so many moral dilemmas that by the time you finish an episode, you can't even trust yourself.
Suspect yourself.
That's so Madonna.
That's the true sign of quality for a game's writing and narrative. They get you as a player so invested that you personally feel responsible for what happens down the line. 'Cause really, you kinda are. Every choice you make or don't make puts so many events in motion, and the outcome is unpredictable. Heck, they set up a chart at the end of each episode highlighting your biggest decisions and comparing them with other players' choices. It's a fun little look back that lets you analyze the outcome and maybe start thinking, what if you had chosen option A instead of option Z? Could you have saved this person? Was their death your fault? It actually encourages a lot of speculation, replayability, and experimentation just to see what happens. And the emotional heaviness makes the experience twice as memorable. And in certain cases, twice as heart-wrenching.
I'll be honest, the first season is probably the best.
Yeah, no argument here. After that, they kind of try and recapture the magic, and it just got kind of stale, convoluted, and really frustrating. And they kind of lie, your choices don't always matter. It seems counterproductive on the surface to play a life simulator game when you're trying to escape life, but surprisingly, a lot of them are a lot of fun. They let you feel in charge and allow you to plan ahead to perfectly construct whatever life you want to live, or wish you'd rather live.
Yeesh, is that the depressing part?
Oh no, it gets better. In the sense that it gets worse.
What happens when that control and freedom is ripped away? Well, you get this war of mine, where you're forced to plan for a life of turmoil and loss. This is a heavy and depressing strategy simulator where you are responsible for controlling and aiding civilians who are forced to live within an active war zone. You start with 4 characters who take residence in an abandoned and derelict building. They can't leave during the day due to constant firefights and the dangers of war, but they can't go far at night due to the area being surrounded on both sides by soldier encampments.
Each character has health, hunger, and emotions that must be kept healthy until the war comes to an end. This is done by improving their living conditions, forming relationships with one another, and, most importantly, going out to scavenge in the dead of night. These scavenging missions are the most heart-pounding parts of the game. You never know what you'll run into, and the streets are swarming with bandits or soldiers who would shoot innocents on the spot without batting an eyelash. Death in this war of mine is permanent, and if a single scavenging mission goes wrong, that character will not get to see a hopeful end to this carnage.
Moral of the story? Take it, Futurama!
Being God isn't easy. If you do too much, people get dependent on you. And if you do nothing, they lose hope.
Good luck carrying that on your shoulders.
While the themes and presentation of the game are heart-wrenching, the gameplay is undeniably fun in a stressful responsibility kind of way. Rationing supplies, taking care of your citizens, and praying that the next scavenging mission goes well are all enjoyable aspects. They're incredibly depressing and difficult to watch, but it's important to remember that fun does not equal happy. Sometimes we get enjoyment from putting ourselves through emotionally distressing situations. It feels incredible to come out successful on the other side, and it helps us appreciate what we have and the lives we live.
Undertale. While we love the quirky characters, we're in tears over the deeper story and tragic backstories.
Borderlands. Just because we're testosterone-fueled gun jockeys doesn't mean we can't have a cry when the moment calls for it.
Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. It's Solid Snake's final chapter, and he's going out with a bang and a sniffle.
Welcome to the Assassin's Creed Japan game we needed, but never got. Set in 13th century Japan, Ghost of Tsushima stars Jin Sakai, nephew to Lord Shimura, the head of their clan. When the Mongols invade, the samurai are the first lines of defense, but
We're not taking any of them with us!
They get wrecked hard. Jin and his uncle are the only survivors, but Lord Shimura gets captured and Jin is rescued by a common thief. Realizing he's kinda outnumbered, Jin travels across the land to recruit an army to fight off those gosh dang Mongolians!
And part of what makes it so fun is how open the game really feels. There's no real waypoint, so the world is rife with exploration, and you can alternate between stealth or full-on action gameplay. Like the Batman Arkham games and Assassin's Creed, being both straightforward and stealthy is fun, and you'll find yourself constantly switching between the two styles based on your tastes as well as a necessity. Traveling this world and completing all the side quests doesn't feel like a chore, because every single thing feels deliberately placed and often doesn't feel very gamey. Heck, there's even dueling to give you the feel of a true samurai experience.
Unfortunately, said experience doesn't come without a price, and it is a heavy price to pay. Jin is a samurai warrior, a soldier of war, so he must maintain a code of honor. Unfortunately, his normal, honorable ways of combat aren't enough to fend off the Mongol hordes. So, regretfully, he is forced to resort to underhanded tactics like backstabbing, propaganda, and even poison. He knows what his goal is, but he is in constant conflict about whether or not his methods will end up causing more harm in the future. And no spoilers, but there's a lot of tragedy in Jin's future. Just look at what they do to the horse!
Why, horsey? Why? Why must animals suffer so?
Honey, that's my plushie.
Not now, honey. I'm still in mourning.
While he pulls himself together, I'll say that this is one of the biggest parts of why the game is so depressing. You actually care about what happens in this world. Apparently up to the point where even a horse dying will bring you to tears.
Don't judge me!
Tsushima is one of the most beautiful games ever made, and seeing what the Mongols do to the world and its citizens really hammers in why you want to save it. Each person you come across feels so real, engaging, and sympathetic. Everyone's so human. So when they dump their traumatic backstories onto you, or suffer copious amounts of misfortune and torture, or meet grisly and untimely demises, you feel sorry for them.
And it's especially sad considering it's a time of war, a time where people can only rely on hope and whatever coping device they can think of. Like we mentioned, that's double for our main hero, who's juggling these frequent compromises of morals and betrayals, all for the small window of hope to finally end all this suffering. But in the end, was it all really worth it? We're not sure.
Needless to say, this game is a literal sucker punch.
I'm the Fire Joker, and I hate that one made sense.
I swear that wasn't on purpose, but I'm not apologizing. Anyway, until next time, no nat ones. Uh-oh.
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Check out my other channels such as Joshua Burner for reactions and other stuff, Dragon Fighter Gaming for tabletop, and Bob Equestria for cartoons. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member. Thanks for watching.